Hey, hello, and welcome to this episode of Learn Everyday English, your roadway to English proficiency. It's a rainy day, and it's going to be raining for today and tomorrow, and I decided, hey, what better time to record a couple of videos? So I recorded one already about English expressions with the word time, and here I'm going to talk to you about something a little bit different, but before I do that, there's 3 things you can do for me. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, and 3, tell your friends about it so that they can benefit from these videos too. Hey, just like you. All right, I'm going to jump right into today's lesson, and I'm going to be maybe waxing philosophical, like have some kind of deep thoughts, and I was thinking about a few things this morning, and I thought this would be a good chat to have with the viewers on Learn Everyday English. Good listening comprehension. I'm going to tell you kind of some true stories. I did that not too long ago. And things kind of that I've learned in life, and maybe you've learned these too. So I'm going to jump right into that and tell you 4 instances in my life where I've had to deal with certain situations, and I'm going to tell you at least 4 things that I've learned from each one of those experiences. So the first experience I had was when I just graduated from college and I just started working at the city of Houston. I was, my early 20s, kind of young, and hadn't really been on my own a whole lot, so it was new and exciting. But here in the United States, especially at this time, I think it was back in 1985, maybe some of you weren't even born then, but it was very common that credit card companies would send you something in the mail and offer you credit cards, for no fee to get the card, but there was like an interest rate they would charge you to use a card. But as a newly graduated college student out on my own and making my own money, and I think I ended up getting about at least 3 of these credit cards. And, it's easy to spend money when you have a credit card because it's not cash that's coming out of your pocket. And, so I got into a bad habit. And I know I didn't have a whole lot of money either. So, when you're just starting out and you have a house or apartment, you need to buy things for the apartment or house, washing machine, furniture, and money you don't have. And I think I ended up having to put a down payment on a car, needed to get a car. So I spent a lot of money and put a lot of expenses on these various credit cards that I had. I don't remember exactly how much I ended up charging on these cards, but I think it was at least $10,000. And I didn't think much about it because, I got the credit card bills in the mail, and I was just paying the minimum amount each month. So after, 3-4 months, I looked at my statement and I said to myself, hey, the balance, which is the amount of money that I still needed to pay, the balance, wasn't going down. And I'm like, that's odd. I'm paying every month, but then I didn't realize, being a young person, somewhat naive, like I didn't know that if you pay the minimum on a credit card, the balance is never going to go down. You'll be paying that minimum for the rest of your life. So that was a big shock. It was a eye-opener for me when I realized that. And I'm like, wow, I didn't know that. I need to do something because I don't want to get further and further into debt. So I ended up, paying off the cards, in maybe 10 months, a year. And I, learned never to do that again. But these are the things I learned about having those credit cards and accumulating all this debt. First, I learned about interest and what interest was and interest rates, and I learned about paying the bare minimum on credit cards is not a good idea. So that's one thing I learned. The next thing I learned was nothing in life is free. And that's an expression we have in English. Nothing is in life is free. There's usually a cost involved, maybe a hidden cost, a cost you don't know, you can't see. But me getting these credit cards, there was a cost, that high interest rate. And by not paying more than the minimum, I was going to be paying and paying and paying for the rest of my life. So nothing is free in life. And another thing I learned was also just because something is available or you have the ability to get it doesn't mean you should get it. So let me say that again. Just because something is available or you have the ability to get it or to do it doesn't mean you should get it or do it, and we suffer from this as a society with just buying stuff we really don't need if we're honest with ourselves. Just because maybe I have the money, I have a good job, I'm bombarded with advertising every day, all day, and I think I really need that thing that's going to make my life very happy. And we accumulate a lot of stuff, but just because we have the ability or the means to buy something or get something doesn't mean we have to do it. We have to think about it and be smarter about it. And the last thing I learned from this credit card situation is I learned to budget and manage my money in a much smarter way, and sit down and see what are my expenses and how much is my income, and always try to save some money every month. So save for a rainy day, for emergencies. So always have an emergency fund. The second experience I want to talk to you about was my first marriage. I was married for 24 years. And, it started off okay, but it got to the point where it was unbearable for me. I'll spare you the details. I won't go into the details. But I learned it was an experience I wouldn't want to repeat again. At times it was very stressful and not a good situation at all. And certain things I regret, but hey, that's life. We all make mistakes. We make decisions, especially maybe when we're young. We don't know any better. And we're so in love, right? And we don't really look at things rationally sometimes or with a clear mind all the time. And I learned a lot of things from that experience. And what I learned was this. One, love doesn't always conquer all. Love doesn't always conquer all, which is what I thought initially. I thought, well, if I love that person enough, if I show them my love, the love that I have for them, they will want to reciprocate that love and to show me the same love in return, or they would maybe look out for my intentions or from my perspective more. But times it doesn't always work out that way, and that was a kind of a humbling and eye-opening experience for me. I was too idealistic. And you could say I was too naive. I always kind of gave people the benefit of the doubt. And then, I guess, tagging along to that, the second thing I learned was you can't make someone change if they don't want to. No matter what you do, like I said, no matter how much you do for them, help them, show them that you love them, bend over backwards, we say in English, bend over backwards, like go the extra mile. If the person doesn't want to change, they're not going to change. And that was a hard lesson I learned. That was a hard pill to swallow. Sometimes we say in English, a hard pill to swallow. And I learned a lot from that. The third thing that I learned from my first marriage, and maybe being in a bad relationship, we say, is I learned what I don't want in a partner or a person, or in my case, a wife or girlfriend. Because a lot of times when we go into or enter into a relationship, we always think about, hey, what do I want in a person? Hey, I want somebody a woman that's attractive, that's smart, has a sense of humor, or a man, good, he has to be good looking, strong, have a good job, makes a lot of money. But a lot of times we don't think about what we don't want in a person. And that was the main takeaway, or one of the things I learned after my first marriage, after I got a divorce, was when I was meeting new people, I knew I wasn't looking so much for what I wanted, but I knew what I didn't want. And if a person had what these characteristics of what I didn't want, that was a deal breaker, we say in English. That just was not a person I wanted to get to know, or as in a deeper way. So I learned what I didn't want in a person. And I'll just give you a brief example. My first wife wasn't really very family oriented, so I knew if I were ever to find another person, meet another person, get married, that person would have to be family oriented, because I grew up in a family that was very family oriented. But sometimes for love, what we think of as love, we maybe do things we may not normally do, and we may not think about it, because we think, well, things will change, things will get better. But a lot of times things don't always change or get better. And the last thing I learned, or good thing that came out of, I won't say came out of, but good thing that happened, was I was able to meet my second wife, the wife I'm married to now. And maybe without going through that first situation, I never would have met her. So I consider that a blessing. The third example or experience I had, I want to talk to you about, was when I was working at the city of Houston. And I was working as an engineer in the solid waste management department. I wasn't doing specifically engineering work per se. It was more environmental work. And I kind of like that as an engineer. I like to have a job. I like to get my projects. I can sit in my office. I do my work. I know I can get the work done pretty quickly and do it very well. And I finish it. I go home. I don't want any extra stress. But at the time, the director of my department, he and I became, good friends over the years, because we had to work in personnel together, and we got to know each other. And he became director, and then he was looking for somebody to be his chief of staff, like his right-hand man. And he had a lady in the position, but that didn't work out. She did some things that kind of undermined his authority, we say. And so she ended up leaving or going to another department. And so he asked me, hey, I would like for you to be my chief of staff. And I initially told him no. And actually, I told him no on 2 occasions, because I just wanted to be able to, do my work. I was comfortable with what I was doing. I was doing it for a long time. I knew what to do, how to do it. And I just didn't really want any extra stress. And I maybe had like 7-8 years to go before I could retire. So I didn't want, to make any changes. I was comfortable in my comfort zone doing what I wanted to do. But he was persistent and kept asking me. And I realized that, the department did have a need for somebody to take over this position and this responsibility. So I finally agreed. I told him, yes, I would do it. And it was a big change for me, because it meant that I would need to be doing a lot of things I had never done before, and I felt I wasn't really prepared for or had the experience for. For example, I was going to have to manage about 11 or 13 people. There were maybe 4 managers, and under them they had other employees. And I'm not big on managing. I do a good job, I think, managing people, but managing employees, to me, is a big headache, huge headache. I'd rather just not do it. But I did it, and I would have to manage what we call a community outreach group. So these were people that would go out into the community and speak at community meetings. I'd have to go out, in the evenings or on weekends, and also maybe speak in front of large groups of people, which, I was a little bit nervous of doing at the time. I got used to it and became second nature. I had to manage the Public Information Office, which dealt with the media, the news media, radio, TV, and the city council members. I had to handle the complaints that were coming in. Had to handle GIS, which is Graphic Information Systems, the mapping. So these were all areas I had no previous experience in, but I said I would do it, and it was a learning curve, but I think I did a very good job. And the director was pleased with my performance, but so that was like a negative type of situation. Well, not negative, but what I felt was kind of a bad situation for me, or a situation I didn't really want to do. Excuse me. But I'm trying to look at some of the benefits that came out of that. One, I was pushed out of my comfort zone. And I thought I didn't like that, but being pushed out of your comfort zone is not always a bad thing. It's not always a bad thing. And for example, I can make the comparison to learning a language. Say if you put in a situation where you, say, have to use your English and communicate, it may be uncomfortable, but in the long run, or overall, it's probably going to be a good thing, because it's going to be a good practice for you. You can find out how good your English is, or maybe how not so good your English is, where you need to improve, what you need to work on, but it's experience that will help you. The next thing that I learned that I could do more things than I thought I could. I thought, well, I can't really go out to communities and speak and represent the director, represent the department, represent the city. I'm an engineer, I'm more technical. But I was able to do that, and I eventually became very comfortable speaking in front of groups of people, like 200-300 people, answering questions. Sometimes people weren't very happy to see you because they were had complaints about the service of our department, and I had to answer those questions and deal with people. I found out I could deal with the media, radio, TV. I ended up doing quite a few radio interviews or television interviews, and some of them weren't very easy or very comfortable or very nice, but so I learned a lot about myself, and I could handle a lot more things than I thought I could. Another thing I learned was that, I learned new things I never would have learned before, how to handle the media, or how the media works, and how a community works, how the workings of, say, higher levels of city administration works. So I learned a lot of things. I got involved in a lot of other types of projects I probably never would have gotten into. I had to work on contracts and purchasing and just a whole lot of different things. And looking back on it now, one of the best benefits of me having to go through this, what I thought was kind of a difficult situation, was I ended up getting, when I went to work for the director, it was a higher position with more responsibility. So I got, I think, 2 raises in those last 7-8 years working for him. And that eventually benefited me because it affected my retirement. It affected my pension. So I was able to get a little more money when I retired, and if I would have stayed and kept working as an engineer. So those are the benefits of taking this new, somewhat difficult position. And don't get me wrong, this position, and in this position, I got a lot more stress from being an engineer. This position at times is very stressful, and but it is what it is. And the last experience I want to talk to you about just happened to me the other day, and I was having problems with my laptop computer. And I kept running out of memory, and I kept deleting files and programs and data that I thought I didn't need, and I'd free up some memory space, but then, say, after a week or a month, the memory would be down. I wouldn't have any extra available memory. Sometimes some programs would not work because there was not enough memory, or we say insufficient memory. And I was going through all my files and folders and trying to find out where was all this stuff at. Where was all this memory being used, or this disk space being used. And And finally, I couldn't really figure it out. And I thought, well, this is a bad situation. Maybe I might just need to get a second or larger hard drive and try to install that in my laptop. But I don't know if this same situation was going to continue. So yesterday, I took my computer to two computer repair places or stores in town to see if they could figure it out. And I went to the first place, and there was a young gentleman there in his 20s. I thought, okay, he's a young guy. He knows all about computers. He'll have this fixed in no time. And he kept going through the computer, looking at every file and folder and checking the properties to see the file size and where all this, because the computer was showing like 200 gigabytes was being used, but the hard drive space was 470 gigabytes. So there was like 270 gigabytes of memory or storage that was being used, but we couldn't figure out where it was going to, because everything else that was being used in the files and the folders only added up to 200 gigabytes. So he kept looking for me for an hour. He and then the owner, the older gentleman, came in and he started looking. And so to make a long story short, as we say in English, after about an hour, the young guy finally said, well, I really don't know what's going on. So that kind of shocked and surprised me. I'm like, these guys are supposed to be the experts, but I said, there's not some type of program you can run to see where all the information is stored and how much and where? He said, no, I'm not aware of anything like that. So then I went to a second computer repair place, and this other gentleman looked a little bit, and he was really perplexed. He didn't really know, but then he said, well, it could be something going on with the Windows environment, the Windows operating system. Sometimes some things get corrupted. It starts acting squirrely, which means acting weird. We really don't know what's going on and this and that. And so then he finally told me something that I didn't want to hear, but I had already kind of thought I was going to need to do. He said, I hate to tell you, but you may just have to reformat your hard drive and reinstall Windows. And I told him I'd already thought of that. I didn't want to do that, but if I need to do that, that may be the only thing to do. So, and to make another longer story short, I ended up actually doing that. I had to reformat my hard drives. That means I had to save everything on a external drive, kind of pretty much clean out, wipe out everything that was on the hard drive, and just reinstall Windows, and then reinstall all of my applications all over again as if it were a new computer, new laptop. But these were the things I learned from this experience, which I thought was a difficult experience, and I was kind of pissed off, upset, angry. But I learned this. I learned that in the Windows operating system, or Microsoft, there is something called the OneDrive. And it's a drive that stores information in the cloud. And but I think the OneDrive, from what I could tell, was using up a lot of memory space tied to my hard drive. And I went online and found some information about that could be a problem. And I didn't really know that, and apparently no one at these other two computer repair stores really knew that either or made the connection. So I ended up just deleting that application or that program from my computer. But I learned more about the computer, how it works, the laptop, the operating system, and file management, having to go and try to figure all this stuff out. And another good thing is basically, so now I pretty much have a new computer, like the computer I got when I first bought it, because there's not much on it, and I know now maybe how better to take care of it, how to organize my files and manage my files. That's a benefit. Another thing, I met the new person here in town. The guy at the second computer store was a real friendly guy. We kind of hit it off, Means like we had a good relationship and we kind of chit-chatted and talked, and I felt real comfortable with him and learned about him and his background. He was an engineer as well, but went into IT, and so I met kind of a new friend, I could say, or a new person, acquaintance here in town. That was a benefit. Another thing I learned was that at times the experts, or so-called experts, quote unquote, this is quote unquote, these so-called experts may not know more than you do, or they may not have all the answers. Because I thought I would take my laptop to these experts, they would get it fixed just like that, and I'd be running, a new laptop. But that wasn't the case, and I was a little bit disappointed and surprised. So sometimes the experts don't really know any more than you do, or don't know much more than you do, because when I took my laptop to them, they were doing the exact same thing I already did by looking at all the files and the folders and trying to look through the properties, determine the file size and where it might be. And the last thing that I've learned is that sometimes we need to be proactive and take the bull by the horns. To be proactive is like not just sit around and wait for somebody else to do something or wait for something to happen. We need to do it ourselves, or we need to kind of make it happen. And that means to take the bull by the horns. So, I needed to do a lot of research, investigation on my own to try to figure what was going on. And in that process, I learned a lot of things. So those were the 4 experiences I wanted to talk to you about. How maybe a seemingly negative or bad situation or uncomfortable situation can turn out in being a kind of a positive thing, because we can learn a lot of things from that situation if we just sit back and think about it. So have you had similar situations where you had a negative situation or a bad situation, but after maybe it was over with, you had time to sit back and reflect on it, think about it, and look back and say, well, hey, I didn't like that situation. I didn't like what happened, but I learned something from that, or there was a good thing that came out of that, because maybe something else wouldn't have happened if that thing hadn't have happened. So let me know your experiences and what you thought about this video. Again, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and tell your friends about it. And thanks for watching, this episode of Learn Everyday English. And have a good day, week, wherever you are in this world. And we'll be bringing you more videos like this in the future. And I'll throw in a couple of shorts, a short every now and then, maybe once a week, to give you something else to watch and to use to improve your English. So again, thanks for listening. Bye, goodbye, and talk to you later. Ciao.